Okay. Hello everyone, to continue. Pretty much in part one. In part one, I was just trying to say that we're unknown. And it was more of kind of like introducing this perspective that everybody's being convinced by some sort of subjective container for reality. It's being very easy for people to truth hop. What that means is jumping from frameworks that give them the illusion of perfection. You know, this world, when you're young, it makes you think like you gotta go run after perfection. But what is perfection, you know? Salvador Dali has this nice quote where he says, "Don't fear perfection, you'll never reach it." And there is also this advice they give to certain artists. I don't know who said it. But the advice is this: that your artwork is complete when you can't take away anything else, or excuse me, when you can't, yeah, exactly, when you can't add any. Oh man. There is just this sense of, I guess, some sort of purification process in the psychology of the human being. Whether it's through the monotheistic view of sin, whether the species feels its past was cruel. You know, for me, I have this very unique view, and I think I'm one of the few people on this planet who has this view, that for me, religions and the prophets of religions, they all behave like time travelers. All religions are like time traveling initiatives. They're initiatives considering the future of man. That means, think about it. A human being received an insight, and this insight was to redirect the collective. That's time traveler behavior. What I'm trying to tell everybody, really, it's not just a feeling, it's an experience I've had. I've come to the edge of perception to in some way. This edge of perception is realizing that if in the known state I am an entity, and in the unknown state the only type of entity we can be is an unknown being. So I'm trying to share this perspective that it's like there's an unknown viewer looking through my eyes at a world that is also unknown the further I look at it. So what it is the situation is not a bunch of materialistic entities on a rock in the middle of nowhere only. Each being has a psychological permission and authorization in the palace of the divine, right? So what this idea means is that the psyche, the hidden depths of the psyche of every individual has opened up in the universal sector in a different way. You know, this is not said often, but eternity is like a flower. How so? It was planted long ago. That means think of it as if you are like this multidimensional flower right now, right? A version of you sprouted in the soil of manifestation, the physical realm. And then a part of you manifested in the soil of the mental realm, imagine. Or imagine a part of you manifested from the beginning of your human lifetime towards its end. And then a part of you had manifested at the birth of a universe. That means it's before there was a self born in a world. When was the world born? And in the mysteries of the human mind, we come to that point where we have to entertain the notion of, I mean, in philosophy they say the necessary existence through the infinite regress fallacy. So what that means is who pushed the first domino? The first domino had to be unpushed. You know, that means the first cause was uncaused. It's as if this is the power of the number zero. It was as if there was a zero world, then there came a one world, and then came a two world. And the two world, people could notice the one and they could also notice the void. But the only way you experience the void, or the or let's say the totality of how your presence in the world and the absence of the world have become two sides of the same coin of your moment of being. You see, after some point, it's not just a human endeavor, because the human endeavor is how your attention is keeping you in the moment. How your attention moves is way more unknown than how you have been taught to be of shape here. And excuse me for being so direct, because there was a moment somebody's like, yo man, what is this? Are you giving pearls to swine? And I was like, no, I don't see the species that way. For me, we are so behind schedule that if we shared 10,000 secrets, it would just be like just a little bit of hastening things up. The idea is we don't know how advanced we can be. Think of it this way. This is an argument I designed, which I'm very proud of. It was revolutionary in my own psyche. And it was this notion that pretty much I thought, like, what sort of cook am I? Right? I thought, like, yo, if I tried to cook like filet mignon, like you see on TV, right? Like I would have a sort of limited ability, but then I would have this view that there's 100% someone on this planet who can cook filet mignon, for example. Okay? So what do I mean by this? I mean that in any act we do, it is very probable and also fathomable that there is someone on the planet with the same situation who can function better, just like chess. Like there's a chess player at a certain rating, and then we know there are chess players who would be in the same situation. They would work with much more depth and vision, let's say. Right, so this idea arose to me that whatever I am, the possibility of the more advanced way of being it is always there. That means, think about it, that how many things will the future generations see? People think that when I give these talks, I'm preaching. You think I'm preaching in a changing world? Like, what do you want me to say? Like I'll show you a mirror and you could think like whatever I am, whatever preacher, right? But it's a mirror. You got to realize the nature of how the position is here, the experience, how experience and existence are being your moment. Because the dichotomy, the duality of it after some point dissolves into a presence, and in that presence it's not humanized. So what this means is they don't teach this in school. You know why? Because we don't know. The species has storified itself into materialistic absolutism. And this is necessary, yet it is not the finale. Because let me tell you why. That which is considering is material is actually an immaterial abstraction considered behind the eyes of the being. So what this means is if somebody's like, yo, I don't believe in the idea of God because there's no evidence, it's also similar to say a person cannot believe in the idea of themselves. That's as fictitious as the idea of God. Do you see what I'm saying? We're in the middle of nowhere, playing the language games of truth, you see? So, I honestly feel that a part of me in this lifetime has experienced various known states. I'm reaching a point where the unknown is becoming interesting. What that means is that the reality shows you how your mind has been holding it. And after some point you wonder how else you can hold your moment of being. How else can meaning arise in your moment? What would an advanced civilization on Earth look like? Whoever you are, this is the great homework assignment of the species. All ideas would come to the argument of the advanced civilization. I don't want to say I made a bet, but a part of me knew that in the outer realms of planet Earth, there's nothing more incredible than seeing what the collective advancement would look like. Do you see, this argument is so powerful that both good and evil beings are rendered speechless by it. Why? Because it is the suggestion of a parallel advancement regardless of the battles of long ago. It is the suggestion that all beings in the universal sector, all beings in reality, in all the endless games of chaos and order they have played, they pause the chaos and order, and in some sense the great conviction is this: if you are a good being, an advanced civilization is your blessing. If you are an evil being, this is the argument for you. Whoever you are, wherever you are, in whatever stand of this coliseum of manifestation you are sitting in. The argument is this: if you want to be evil, if you want to be good, do it in an advanced context. Good and evil are a conceptual battle, but the context of the world is where good and evil are being noticed at the same time. This doesn't mean we render, judgment is void in the outer realms. It just means that the human species is going through such a complex event, and it's experiencing it so simply that the mystery of why it needs language to convey something that is directly happening is like itself like a mystery. I don't know how to say it. It's like there was a moment where I was like, wait a minute, Okay, this is working fine, I think. It's the ultimate freedom. A freedom from the conditional perception of a limited world. What I'm trying to say is that the idea of you is limited. The concepts in this planet are limited. But the context is limitless. And this is the genius in the idea of God. The idea of God was that moment in human history where the context of the world was personified. Do you understand? The totality of being was personified to the will of I don't want to say an individual, but the will of a singular intent. Do you understand? That means just like there were storytellers, people suddenly realized it was as if there was this great storyteller, inconceivable storyteller, and it started to tell a conceivable story. You see, this would be similar to the notion of, is it man's life or is it God's life here? Right? For example, Swami Krishnananda says religion is God remembering himself. What does he mean? He means it's the inconceivable's memory. You're not just living a life as a soul in a world. Poetically, you are being the design of the memory of God. The mind of the beyond you are in the presence of. It is no person. There is no special channel. Oh my God, is that guy in like advanced radio? No. Once you realize what is moving here, you will realize experience is functioning singularly, but existence in its effect is dualistic. What does this mean? This means once you awaken from the linguistic simulation, once you realize everybody you have known has been strips of linguistic code in your mind, you will laugh in the silence that holds it all, because that silence is where the ultimate freedom is. There's an incredible story from this yogi which I pointed to in part 1 named Sri Ramana Maharshi, the great sage of Arunachala, Mount Arunachala. There's a story of this very liberated, constantly in samadhi yogi. This yogi was so liberated that it's another way of saying this human being had realized something so profound that many human beings gathered around him automatically. Sri Ramana Maharshi, one day, this man uses a cane. He wanted to walk to the other village, and he usually had people escorting him, and he said, no, I want to walk alone. And so this man is walking in this mountain, going from one village, and in the middle of it he gets tired, and there's this out of all the trees, there's this dry tree. Okay, and he goes and puts his back on the dry tree, and then he, in some sense, takes a nap. He opens his eyes and he sees the tree has blossomed. He suddenly looks in front of him and he sees there are 7 human beings in front of him, but they do not have the personalities of the human beings. The 7 beings in front of this sage that is awakened, they introduce themselves as the gods of all the lokas. That means in Vedic mythology, Earth is this plane of existence is the bottom of Mount Meru. So that means we're at the bottom of the 7 upper worlds. There are 7 lower worlds too, but those are unconscious loops until consciousness blooms. So the lokas are like levels. And so the gods of each dimension introduce themselves, and the highest dimension is Brahma Loka, and that's where you don't reincarnate anymore once you're a resident. And so all these gods approach Sri Ramana Maharshi, and they give him a compliment. in the story, and they say we have not seen any human being on this planet that has the silence you have. There is so much noise on this planet that it's as if you are like an oddity, your silence. And then after that, Shironi, gets up and he goes back and, conveys the story. And here I am sharing it, after all the cycles it's been through. Excuse me, to continue. So, where am I left with this? Why am I saying the unknown is the source of all power? Because contextually, we're inside an unknown verb, but conceptually, we're treating ourselves as known individual nouns. So in the middle of this massive multidimensional event, we're treating ourselves as a little part of it, not realizing how can we ever know the totality when we have separated from it. You see, this is the bizarre thing, that this is why I think scientists do not like philosophers around. Because philosophers are designed to break worlds. And scientists and various fields of experimentation require worlds, actually, to experiment, and they require boundaries, right? It's all about how we're containing the perception of the human experience while it's here. There's something way more valuable than all our ambitions and desires. I am telling you, there's something bigger than the individual here happening, and it's unknown. And that's the most honest view. When I say the unknown is the source of all power, check this out. They say energy cannot be created or destroyed, or changes from form to form. In religion, they say God was neither created, can't be created or destroyed, or similar definitions for the soul. It can't be created or destroyed, but changes. Like, for example, the soul reincarnates from lifetime to lifetime, right? Energy changes from form to form, but the essence of it doesn't change. So it's as if we're in this type of world where we can't be temporary without an eternal consideration. So it's as if this bizarre thing where we're acting like temporary beings, but we cannot truly understand we're temporary until we understand what eternity is. If we consider the temporary is always disconnected from eternity, it's another way of saying that a world that it's like you went to this hallway. How would I tell you? It's as if the person was went into an art gallery with different artwork, and they put a box on their head, and they're like, I don't know, man, I don't see anything, right? So it would be as if, like, as the poet Rumi says, your task is not to seek love, but to get rid of all the barriers you have made against it. Your task is not to seek truth per se, like like chasing the butterfly and being a step behind, but your task is to get rid of all the barriers you have made against that which was, or I should say that which is before you were. That's true spirituality. What else can spirituality be? It means what you thought you were, you never were. That's what spirituality means. The unknown is the source of all power. And so any being in this reality that claims power, I'm not talking about God, because God is an inconceivable being. And the idea of the inconceivable, we put a greater than sign to the idea of a being. You see, this is why I think people feel like I don't mean any disrespect, but honestly, I feel that religious forces are not introducing religion properly. Religion is when you notice that your free will cannot solve something this big. So then the question of will appears. Whose will is it? What is moving here? Is it a physical entity? Is it an ideological entity? Is it an unknown viewing force tunneling through all the experiences of the lifetime as a present being, as a present moment? You see, the ultimate realization is that all the concepts and language we use to explain to ourselves what we are is the Iron Man suit. It's the it's the suit we're wearing. That means if a person, imagine somebody's driving a car, right? Or imagine if Tony Stark identified with the Iron Man suit. It's like anything would happen to the Iron Man suit, his psyche would think it's happening to his body. But if he realizes he's in the Iron Man suit, the fear of moving in the Iron Man suit goes away. You see, fear is always there because the person decided not to be honest. And honesty is very humbling. Honesty is when a sort of archetype gives up on its fantasy. You see, you are such an advanced being that if you wonder about how many different days you've woken up and moved as an entity, as a being here, you will be surprised how advanced the brain is. Like whatever this is here, it's incredibly advanced. And the same amount of energy it takes to think that we are weak and inefficient and inferior species, do you understand? We humbly march towards the stars. It's like this idea an advanced, an enlightened being doesn't need to look for enlightenment. It doesn't need to have the idea of enlightenment. If there's anybody who has gone through this enlightenment and afterwards still that they tell people, yo man, enlightenment, jump into the soup, like I'm telling you, there's something beyond what the human can point to. This is why poets exist. Poets are just saying, yo, there's something more. And philosophers all have always listened. There's an ancient, I would say, kind of lineage and force and relationship between poets and philosophers, I'm telling you. Because the poet is the world discoverer, the philosopher interprets the world's discovered. I'll give you a perfect example of three archetypes: the mystic, the poet, and the philosopher. There's the Sufi story. There's the story, let me say. These three friends, okay? They suddenly, one day they're going to the edge of town and they realize this giant wall has appeared out of nowhere, mysterious giant wall. As the three of them walk past it, they find this long, this stairs going up to the wall. This ladder, not stairs, this ladder, this long ladder that goes to the top of the wall. So what happens is the first two friends hold the ladder, right? And one of them goes up, the first friend goes up, let's say, to the ladder, and he gets up on the wall, and the two friends are looking, and he sees something so fascinating that he just jumps in, right? And what he actually sees is the Garden of Paradise. He sees heaven, and he jumps in. That's the archetype of the mystic. The second friend, suddenly both the friends that were holding the ladder, they're like, what happened to the first guy? And so the second friend's like, all right, man, I'm gonna go check it out. You hold the ladder. The second friend climbs up the ladder, and the second friend here represents the archetype of the poet. The second friend looks and sees, oh my God, the Garden of Paradise. Just like how the first guy had said when he had seen it and jumped in. And so the second friend, before he jumps in, he's like, I gotta tell the first friend down there. And he says, hey man, the Garden of Paradise is up here. And he jumps in. The third friend realizes there's no one to hold the ladder, but he is fascinated. He climbs up the ladder and he goes up, and the third friend represents the archetype of the philosopher. The third friend, suddenly his eyes see the Garden of Paradise. He suddenly sees what the mystic directly experienced, and in some sense what the poet through language left behind. Keep in mind, the poet jumped into paradise. That means the poet is way more convinced by direct experience than, indirect. But anyways, check this out. So the third friend looks at the Garden of Paradise, sees the other two friends, and before he jumps, and everything's telling him jump, before he jumps, he suddenly says, oh my God, the Garden of Paradise is here. The world should know. And he climbs down the ladder, and that is the philosopher. The being that went to the edge of the beyond, but brought it back. There's an incredible amount of transcendental engineering going on. Like, what I mean is, like, the function of how things are moving can be interpreted in so many ways that it's kind of like the brain is a dimension generating a process, or a world generator. It's like, hey man, how do I get a world generator? It's like, yeah man, just meditate. So, dear viewers, you will at some point notice, out of all the ideological systems, there's 8 billion human beings here, so many ideological systems to go. For me, it's all come down to a strategy. Science had its method, religion had its revelation. What Mr. Within has is a strategy for Civilization 2.0. And it begins when we are not afraid of the unknown. You see, it's a symbiosis between that which we don't understand and that which we do. We are living with an intelligence that is field-like. It is not particular. So many people have looked for paradise in front of their eyes. But what if behind your eyes there is a silence that beckons onto itself the secrets of this totality? Just imagine that there will come a moment where all that is physical has become a movement beyond your will. Imagine a moment has come where all subjective boundaries have in some sense been broken. Imagine a moment where you realize that consciousness is a river The biological body is acting as an antenna. What this means is that space is alive. And space is unknown. The source of all power is unknown. You know, I have been watching karma like I'm a twin. Do you know what that means? That means I've been watching the karma of someone who looks like me but doesn't behave like with my vision. And what I mean by this is that I have watched karma throughout my whole lifetime, and there have been or in my conscious waking state, even in my dream state, I've wondered what kind of karma I've had, you know. But the dream state is strange. It's kind of like a new dream is like entering a new room of your mind. Everything is like an exploration, right? Just like that scene in movies where the explorer has a machete and is like cutting the vines in the Amazon to discover a new path. Similarly, every day we wake up, consciousness is trying to, in some sense, see what else there is here. You see, it's like there's so many different shops, okay? I'm saying there's the spirituality shop, there's the religion shop, and let's say there's the, scientific shop, secular shop, right? So many philosophical shops. There's so many different portals, that are ideological portals to the truth of reality that have been opened. Do you know? And so the portal that I am opening in the middle of this is the portal to the archetype of the advanced. One prayer I have had very deeply in this lifetime. Think of it as if, like, you know, the lionized soul roaring, you know, a prayer like that, where I have just wanted to see how advanced my reality can be before it isn't, I'm no longer here, or it is no longer here. Do you see what I'm saying? Why else are we manifest? Why else are we here? The species has forgotten of the archetype of advancement, has forgotten of the advancement principle, has forgotten about the advanced humanity. That is the supremacy. It's like all the shows where, you know, what is it the younger generations are getting super emotional about in regards to, wow, a hero came and saved us. It's like this hero worship is a suggestion of the hero within. Do you understand? Because we don't want to be treated like children, like, you know, being carried by, like, you know, saviors. Do you understand that the savior may need carrying too? I'm not talking about a religious archetype. I'm just saying that the heroic vision is one where it's selflessly living. But if everybody's not selflessly living, that means it's this bizarre situation where I think many human beings are actually selflessly living for selfish people. And do you know why? Because it's the human experience. It's the hidden honor that the soul has for where it is. Do you know, some people may think this is how do I say it? You get tired of all the ways, at some point, at least I did. I got tired of all the theater. There's so many ways. At some point you'll just notice there's infinite viewpoints here. Which one do you choose? Right? If you just go based on analysis, you don't have the computing ability to analyze all variables in the moment. You're pretty much left as a being with unknown variables and known variables. If the ratio of unknown to known, let's say the known is more, it's very easy to have an ego and think you're like the boss and you're certain all the time. right? There's something between confidence through consciousness and then a sort of confidence which is in some sense trying to bunker itself down into a bulldozer like archetype. Okay, it's like the idea is not for us to just be like, yo, our ancestors behaved this way, so everybody else till the end of time has to behave that way. Like do you understand what I'm saying? There's something deeper here and something way more important than an individual's claim. Okay, I'm in this odd situation where I was like, okay, so I'm holding in this moment, living moment of history, this point in history, I'm holding the archetype of advancement. That's my banner. The idea of the advanced civilization, the archaic revival of the castles and the clouds. That's why Mr. Within is here. Because let me tell you this, the past is past. What are we gonna do? The present doesn't have a clue. The future is the main event. Everybody, whether they like it or not, whether you're good or evil, all your actions go towards the future. For some reason, the human mind has an ability to envision what the future looks like. Okay, this is why there's so much science fiction literature. This is why there's futurists. This is why, even there's people like fortune tellers are proof that the human mind wonders about the future or can recreate it in some sense for itself. Do you understand? It is the greatest, one of the most beautiful. I don't know if anybody has ever thought a problem could be beautiful, but sometimes a problem is beautiful when you can solve it, when you see the solution. It's like the planets have aligned for a moment. It's a joy of its own. Somebody once said, when a person doesn't get what they want, their true nature comes out. And it's fair to say that the true nature of our species for now, due to let's say, the furnaces where the biological body was crafted evolutionarily, it's beastly. What this means that some people may look and be like, yo man, society is deteriorating. It's like, no man, we were savage beasts. There was a point where human beings did not even communicate. They just found weapons to kill each other on sight. Now we have incredible capabilities of discourse, understanding each other's perceptions. Even if the more you mature in this lifetime, you even see that it's not about like just looking through people's eyes, but also wondering what other emotional realities are there. And what emotion means, or I should say an emotional reality of an individual, is how is that individual being in their own story of life. Do you understand? It's like a person. I'll give you an example. For example, I don't go up to my 90-year-old, sorry, not 90, like let's say, I think like late 80s grandfather, and who's very religious, and it's like religion gives us heart contentment and whatnot, and go tell him, yo man, it's like, there's other dimensions, it's like, let me explain the Big Bang, it's like, no, because I understand that there's an emotional preservance, right? People are not just being seen as people to others, they're being people to themselves. Believe it or not, if you don't treat yourself as a human being, you can lose sight of it. If you don't treat others as a human being, you won't feel worthy to be human. This is the tragedy of evil. The tragedy of evil is that it destroys because it's the easy way. Like, what the hell? Like, who wants to go? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's like evil is too easy. That's why it's like a little boring. but at least good has the patience to see what new things can be created, right? That means it's as if somebody was saying, how is an evil being, let's say, experiencing and updating, they find good things and let's say destroyed, and that's like a new experience of evil. Okay, but how is a good being cultivating experience? The good being's like, okay man, things take a long time to arise, so we gotta value it. And then the good being's like, in the best case scenario, what would be the best outcome? But I think for evil, it's in the best case scenario, what would be the worst outcome? Do you see? And either way, it's about like what opportunity there was and it was missed. That means it's this idea of like, just think about it, just like how there's infinite ways to look at things, different things on this planet. How many ways do you think there are to look at yourself? Have you wondered about that? People are like, yo, I'm just this kind of person, that kind of person. Oh, really? I thought that our bodies were changing all the time, and I thought our attention was moving. Do you know how many times the brain self-simulates itself throughout the day based on new stimulus being coming into its awareness? We think we are human because it's easy. Like the thought, just being like, yo, man, I'm just this thought, that's what's up. But how can a thought think? How can abstraction move reality? That's the mystery. One mystery is like, what if our eyes can never close? And it's another way of saying, what if the truth can't go anywhere? Contextually free yourself, dear being. I don't want to say there isn't enough time, but I would say it this way. Whoever you are, if you can find a moment in this lifetime and just for a second pause like a video game, whatever you think the meaning of reality is, and for a second wonder, what does your species deserve? It deserves the honesty to acknowledge itself. Itself is unknown. So that's first. Then it requires the responsibility of its experience. And the responsibility of an experience means that advanced being is fearless. Not fearless in a way where it's the absence of vulnerability. And advanced being is another way of saying, and of course, I'm just one person talking about it, but an advanced being, in my view, is that it's a being that is advanced in all conscious dimensions, in all the dimensions it has access to. That means that's the level of the advanced humanity. That means parents aren't like, raising their children, being like, I just want you to be a good person. No. We want the whole species to advance. Let me tell you why. Because it will bring forth the celebration cultures. And it will have this feeling that let me say it this way. Right now, civilization is making people, let's just say for now, okay, people are making more inefficient decisions than efficient ones. AI may reduce that percentage, but the idea is, as the species makes more efficient decisions, it would accumulate victories of smaller battles. These smaller battles will in some sense get momentum. So what this means is that in an advanced civilization, there's so much more efficient decisions being made, that if an inefficient decision is made, there is no judgment. There is just boundary distance. Do you understand? I think this is how the metropolis of the future, or even the sky cities, I've constantly wondered about the architecture of a city in the sky. And so, I don't know who it was, Socrates, or I think it was Socrates, or Plato, I don't know. One of these guys had this idea of the metropolis, and it was this sort of, if I remember correctly, this concentric circle onion type of city. idea, okay? As if like Socrates cut an onion and he's like, oh my god, I see a city in this. In other words, Socrates or Plato, whoever it was, loved onions so much they made a city out of it. But what is the genius of the idea of the concentric circle sector-bound city? It's the idea that the center, or this is at least the way my vision of it is, of let's say the sky cities. This is just a prototype, like one example. I've even spoken about in my science fiction an evolutionary chart of sky cities, like pretty much houses become spaceships. We're all gonna live inside spaceships. Like right now we're living in a spaceship that can't lift off. That's what your house and apartment is. So it would be as if the center of this concentric circle onion shaped city would be the most pure sector. Anybody who does a crime, all children are born in that pure sector, and anybody who does a crime, their punishment is they leave that sector. Okay? And I'm not talking about government control and all that. Let me tell you, evil will realize that it is a comrade in manifestation. What that means is like there's something way more exciting than the endless loop of creation destruction. It's the maintenance of it. It's as if right now the idea of the advanced civilization is another ancient Vedic way of saying it is Vishnu's performance, not Shiva's or Brahman's. Both of them are here. These are all three ways the dimension of reality can be held through a deity fashion. But what I'm trying to say, am I the only one here so fascinated by how we are unknown beings that I'm like, we don't even know the potential of us to build an advanced civilization? Imagine children in the future waking up in an advanced civilization. Doesn't mean it's like some fruity utopia, you know? An advanced civilization is literally a psychological state of a species that does not fear what it is and where it is. Therefore, it can access the site of it and then rebuild. You know, people, I think, have the impression, you know, even I had for myself, I'm like, yo, man, am I being like a very spiritual person or something? And I realized, no. The future is my divinity. The future is inconceivable. That's the beauty of it. I think about what are some inconceivable ideas on this planet. The idea of space, the idea of emptiness, the idea of oneness, but also the idea of the future. And even in religion it says everything started from God, everything returns to God. Do you understand? If you're religious, the advanced civilization is the suggestion of God's greatest creation and its greatest performance on earth. It's the remembrance of the divine. It is the supreme faith. Because that faith means that it's like, just like a person, let's say, serves truth through religious modality, you are serving the totality, the expression of that. The potential of the human being is the greatness of the human soul, is the greatness of the soul. So I thought, you know, it was like, I'm gonna write a philosophy book. You know, I'm just gonna create my own philosophy and be like, that's it, guys, I'm out of here. And now I'm realizing I cannot. It's like leaving this planet is like like leaving an unfinished engine. Do you know that has to start running soon? And so in this world, let's say you have been drawn to ritualism, you've been drawn to ceremonialism, you've been drawn to some sort of behaviorology, to attain some sort of abstract perfection or outcome. O humanity, your divine practice is to be human. And to get to see that humanity, that means it's like this cool idea where you haven't come into this world to meet other people for the first time. You have also entered this world to meet yourself for the first time. When I give these talks, I'm like, no way I could talk like that, So that's what I'm saying. The unknown is the source of all power, in the same sense that the unknown is the context of the known concepts of power. So, let's say you've acknowledged the unknown. Then the individual wonders, what now? I'm an unknown self in an unknown world. I've realized that it's an unknown presence, knowing everything instantaneously. What now? This is where if you've truly understood the unknown, you'll also realize the questions and desires for outcomes are also unknown. So what I mean is that the contentment with the unknown is like allowing your moment to happen prior to its subjective containment. For me, it's finding the bliss of how this whole lifetime I have entertained so many archetypes, but it's unknown. It's an unknown presence, watching itself change. So truth's birthplace is the pre-linguistic presence of the totality of being, which is by the nature of our acceptance of anything in an unknown world. It's like what I'm trying to say is that the species has been entranced. They teach children spelling. Little do we know that our communication, just like how the poet Hafiz said like 700 years ago, the words you speak become the house you live in. So what sort of inner vision guides your being as you are present now? Because let me tell you, there is so many beings like me. There are so many voices that in accordance to what they have cultivated must express. In order to build an advanced civilization, we need an advanced humanity in the outer realms. In order to have an advanced humanity in the outer realms, we need to have an advanced humanity in the inner realms. In order to have an advanced humanity in the inner realms, every person has to start by first walking towards the advanced civilization they see. As you climb out of your inner realms, you would hit the reset point, and you would suddenly notice the outer advanced civilization, what's actually going on in the outer realms. Once you choose to honestly serve this life force that's moving everything, that's including all of us, then life becomes a very honorable place. Because if you, I don't want to say if you don't live for something, it's not that we're living for something, we're not even a thing to live for something. But what it is what can be done with what we have while we have it. Does genius need another definition? The unknown is the source of all power. If we don't fear the unknown, we may be capable of observing how the whole event is powered. Your eyes belong to a better world, and your heart is already there. Rise, mankind, rise.